My name is Sandra Smith. I run our corporate and executive education programs at Brown School of Professional Studies, and it's really my pleasure today to speak with you, and thank you for taking time from your schedules to join us. We have about 30 minutes or so together today. I'm joined by Mike Hutchins, who is an adjunct lecturer in professional studies here with the School of Professional Studies. He also founded and runs a firm that we have partnered with, ACT Coaching, for our leadership development programs. And we're just thrilled to be able to offer this program again with you today. So I have a few slides. If maybe we can get started with that, Mike, if you wouldn't mind. Sure. And what I want to say for those of you who are here with us today is to please send us your questions. These sessions are a lot more interesting when we can answer your questions. That's the whole benefit of showing up to a live webinar like this, is that we get to address your questions. So as I said, we're here to talk about a program called Leader as Coach. Before I hand it over to Mike, I want to just talk briefly about our partnership with ACT and what that really means. We at the School of Professional Studies really believe in, obviously we are strong providers of leadership development programs. And what we are committed to is a development of leaders who are agile, who are nimble and are responsive in today's day and age of big changes. Work is being done increasingly in teams. And we really think that coaching is at the heart of the skill set that leaders need to have to be able to manage in this kind of uncertain and volatile environment. So with that, about 5 years ago, we began our partnership with ACT Leadership with both Mike and Aaron Hutchins. We found that they had just we have very aligned models of leadership. And so we've begun offering programs together. This is our 4th program together. We've been working in our executive master's leadership programs. ACT provides assessment as well as coaching and instruction of leadership in that executive master's programs, and now in our open enrollment programs as well. And so we're really excited about the partnership. We've been together, like I said, for almost 5 years. I think we're going on our 6th year. And this program of Leader as Coach is a perfect program for someone who is looking to develop as a leader those coaching skills, and may or may not eventually want to become an executive coach. We have a different program that is much more intensive. All of the programs are, that program is certified by the International Coaching Federation. But to this program, Leader as Coach is the express version of that for leaders that, have teams underneath them or are leading in a virtual environment. So with that, I want to really just hand it over to Mike, who's going to walk us through the program. And I'll stay here for any questions that you may have. And once again, I want to encourage you to send us your questions as we go through. And without further delay, Mike, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Sandra. First of all, just quick introductions. So I think, Sandra kind of just gave a very brief introduction there, but for us as instructors, so I'll start with actually my wife, Erin Hutchins. She's the other co-founder of ACT. She is an MCC, which is a master certified coach, which basically means she's been doing this a long time and working with clients for, over 10, 15 years. She is also an adjunct lecturer for Brown Professional Studies, as I am as well. As is Brian Klein. And so we will be for the live sessions, we will be the trainers, and there'll be 2 of us for each of those sessions, each of those 4 sessions. We'll talk more about the sessions in a little bit. So our background really is, we've done a lot of organizational development work over the years and a lot of consulting engagement. So working with large organizations to really look at things like employee engagement, to look at what makes, effective, inclusive teams. So we do a lot of work with teams. And from that, what we've found is that one of the key missing pieces, and it's not the only piece, right? It's like we see leadership as more than just coaching, right? It's a whole range of different skills and styles and competencies, but certainly coaching is one. And by coaching, we mean helping develop people, right? How do we humanize work? How do we create more engagement at work? That's often been the missing piece. You know, it's not something that we learn at school. You know, we may have some training around empathy or things like that, but it's not really something that's formalized training. And so we find is a lot of leaders get into senior positions, and I'm actually going to stop sharing for a minute. I'll come back to the slides in a bit, but they, you know, maybe don't develop the actual skills of being able to relate to people beyond looking at, you know, technical challenges and doing problem solving. So that's really where we see coaching as a helpful way to really humanize work, make it more inclusive, create a safe space for people to come in and just show up and be who they are. So a little bit more about the why. Like, why is coaching such a big deal now? You know, why is it that, you know, business schools and organizations are really turning a lot to coaching? And I think, you know, if we look at what's been happening the last couple of years, and, you know, it's like every time we have this conversation, something else has shifted societally, economically, geopolitically, right? There's so much change that's going on in the world right now. And, you know, as Sandra mentioned, sort of the VUCA, right? The volatility and the uncertainty that's happening. Leaders are saying, hey, I don't have the answers. I can't predict what my next quarter is going to look like. I can't predict, you know, what I'm going to need from resources, what I'm going to need. I don't know when my team's going to be coming back to work. You know, there's so many different things going on that need to be expressed. And I think the traditional way of leading just isn't really serving them in being able to do that. So the idea of coaching is, and what is coaching? You know, coaching is, formal coaching really is that you see the other person as creative and resourceful. That's like the regard with which you look at somebody. The idea is that they have the answers within them. And your job as a leader is to help elicit that from them. So, you know, a traditional way, and a way that we're kind of learned through our training, is more about telling, is more about being directive. It's the assumption is I'm the boss and I have the answers, and my employees, you know, need to do what I tell them to do, right? The very traditional way of leading. And it is so different now. You know, it's like you look at clients, customers, they're coming in, it's like, if I don't get this in 5 seconds, I'm going to switch and I'm going to go somewhere else and get it. So the idea of empowering and pushing down authority, right, within the organization, so that those more junior members of teams feel confident and safe in being able to make decisions, right, to have more autonomy in their work. And certainly what we've seen with younger generations coming through the workforce is, you know, if they're not getting that, then there's a good chance they'll go somewhere else to get it. So, you know, there's more of a sense of, you know, meaning, finding meaning in their work and finding more autonomy in their work that's needed. So where does coaching help specifically? Well, in this program, what you're going to learn is, you know, how to, first of all, how to create safety. So this concept of like co-creating the relationship with your team. How do we want to have an effective, inclusive relationship where you can come to me and feel safe saying, I don't know what I'm doing, or, you know, I need help. So it's those sort of conversations that the leader is able to do. So that's a discipline. It's actually a concept that's used by the International Coaching Federation. So we spend time at the beginning training you in how to be able to do that with your teams back at work, with the employees that you work with. And it really starts with that foundation. If there's no safety there, then it's hard to progress. So we really emphasize that at the beginning. Once that has been established with the team, and there's a sense of trust that's there, we then look at the difference between coaching and mentoring. So we're defining mentoring as problem solving and giving advice. And they're the two sort of like, if you think about the duality of these two, there's coaching, which is help the other person figure it out for themselves. Mentoring is I'm going to tell them what to do. So we look at this kind of spectrum, and you get to think about and become more self-aware, like, what is my default? Where do I typically jump to? Am I someone that jumps in and says, I need you to go and do this? Or are you someone that steps back and says, in this, what do you think? What would you do in this situation? So asking more of an open-ended question around helping them create their own cognitive capacity to solve their own problems, to think for themselves. This idea of teach a person to fish, right? You're reducing the dependency on you as the leader, as the boss, to enable them to do it themselves. Pause.
Pause, Mike, just 1 second. Wanted to address a question that has come in
Yes.
through the chat. And if you want to put up slides for this is totally up to you.
Sure.
Or not. So the question is coming from Mindy. Thanks, Mindy, which is, I'm seeking a program from a newly promoted director of a 24/7 operations team. We want to assist in his development as a department head. Is this the best program of your offerings to meet this need? Or is this specific program better at a later date when he has more experience in his new role? I have my answer for that, but I'll let you maybe take a crack first.
Sure. Great question, and challenging 24/7 ops environment for sure. First of all, I think the first thing I would say is, can this individual release themselves to do this program? And this isn't a really time-intensive program. It's pretty flexible. We try and make it as flexible as possible, but just making sure that they're able to actually commit to and honor the content, for the 2 months. Because if they're going to be in the new role in a 24/7 ops center, they may not even have the capacity to absorb this. Assuming that they can, someone stepping into a new role is a perfect opportunity to establish the ways of working for this team, or to set the culture for this new team. If you've already gone in and you sort of set it in your old way of doing it, maybe you're copying and pasting an old leadership style from somewhere else into this new role, and then you go through this program, people are like, what's shifting here? Are they come off a leadership program here? Are they trying something new? So typically it would be best to do it either concurrently, with the new role, do the training with the new role, or ideally before, so you're kind of set up for success.
Mike, just one thing I'll add to that, which you'll get to in a minute, I think, is the program is, I think you mentioned eight weeks or so, a couple of months.
Yeah.
But it's important to note that is really only 4 or 5 synchronous sessions. So we'll get to that in a minute, but every other week is when you have to set aside about 3-hour block. But the weeks in between, it's very much self-directed, and you're really meeting for about an hour with your triad at a time that's convenient to the group. So it's not that you're signing up for, I just wanted to not overstate the synchronous commitment, which I think tends to be the more challenging part, to make sure that you can line up your schedule for.
Does that help answer your question, Mindy?
We'll let, sure, Mindy's trying to, I know I'm having to, oh, there we go. Yep, thank you, perfect. So we could maybe move forward. Thanks, Mindy, for the question.
Thank you. And as we go through this, it will hopefully shed more light on that question as well. So what we're saying here is that, as you go through this program, you'll look at what is my default style? Am I somebody that jumps in every time? And so you look at yourself, you look at the team or the people you're working with, or who are reporting into you. And then the third piece is the situation. So if you think about situational leadership, and so we sort of give you this Venn diagram that helps elicit your approach in any moment. What's my default? What does this person need? Or what's this person's default in my team? Do they just come to me expecting me to answer their questions all the time? And then what does the situation present? And in an ops center, I like you raise this one as an example, right? If it's moment to moment, and I'm kind of making assumptions here, but if it's sort of a reactive environment where needing to respond all the time, then maybe in that moment you would be giving answers, right? If that's what was needed. But if you were able to step back and say, I'm noticing as a leader, I'm getting sucked into the operations all the time. What is the impact on the development of the team? If I'm constantly getting sucked in, what's the impact on them and what's the impact on me? You know, how am I able to lead and how am I able to have that altitude if I'm constantly being drawn in? So what coaching does is, first of all, you build that self-awareness, and ACT stands for awareness, choice, transformation, right? So you become aware of how you're operating. And then we give you the skills, we give you the structure. So we look at things like listening, right? So instead of just listening to respond or listening for information and facts, we have this idea of listening through your senses. So it's like, what's really going on in this situation? Like, not just what they're saying, but what is it they're not saying? Like, what's really underneath this? You know, is it that they're frustrated? Is it that they're angry? Is it that they're, you know, what's the underlying emotion? What's the assumptions that they're operating from? So you get to listen for that and build the connection with the other person to demonstrate that you're really with them. And then this idea, you meet them where they are. And once you've met them, you then start asking these open-ended, what we call powerful questions, which really are focused on the other person to help them really work out a solution for themselves. So you may say, well, what does an ideal outcome look like here? You know, let's imagine we're having this conversation next week. What do you want this to look like? Let's look at this from different perspectives. And so you'll really learn like how to create, and these aren't canned questions, by the way. They're questions that you will learn through your curiosity. So through the mindset of being curious and open and agile, you'll learn how to just ask those powerful questions. And that's something that all the students from previous cohorts have said is, you know, by, you know, a month into this program, I'm able to just reframe and ask my questions differently, to have a real impact on the team and really, you know, just foster more engagement by being more inclusive with those questions.
Mike, I'm getting a question.
Sure.
And I think at some point we probably should put up the slides as well, just so that make sure people get some of the information, because I'm getting some questions around more of the logistics piece. But on the content, which is great, can you provide an example of these types of questions or tricky situations that people get into from a leadership perspective that this program might help me with?
Yeah, so there's actually a slide that we don't have here right now, but it kind of summarizes what our alumni students, you know, we check in with them 3 months, 6 months, a year after they finish this program. And, you know, we've been running this now with the federal government. We've been running it for years, and we've got over 2,000 leaders that have been through this, a couple of the Department of Defense agencies. And we check in and say, like, what's shifted for you as a leader as a consequence? And the things that come up typically are my ability to have difficult conversations and give feedback, my ability to work with my team in career development and performance management. So really sitting down and really connecting with, like, what is it that you want in your career? What are the values and your purpose? Like really helping them connect with those things. Other things are leading change. So if you're leading a change initiative, like how do you make space and safe an environment where people can really share like their resistance or their fear around a change initiative. So that's another one. And then what we hear from people in sales is my ability to really connect with my clients. So rather than going in with my agenda, is actually to engage, listen, and then help frame a solution that's going to work for this client. And so it's like building that trust, like being that more trusted advisor where you can actually come up with a solution, like co-create a solution that's actually going to work where the client really feels invested and doesn't feel like they've been sold to. So that's another big piece. And we've seen like employee engagement increase significantly just because employees again, feel safer to show up for work. I don't know, anything else from you, Sandra?
No, I mean, I think that's great. Just wanted to maybe just clarify for those that are listening. In this context, the client per se is not really a client you're coaching, but as an employee that you have, right? So within the Leaders Coach program, as a leader, you're coaching, you're leading through coaching people that report to you. So I think it's helpful sometimes to think of them as sort of your client, but in reality, in a work environment, it's more of a leader subordinate relationship, but it may not be. So I think what is important is that this program is giving people a toolkit that is, sometimes you do have to direct people, right? And sometimes you have to mentor, but I think it's really powerful to distinguish coaching as its own skill that can enable you to really empower your employees. One other thing I will just mention is, from having watched the cohorts go through the program, I would say what I have observed is how at the end of the program, people really talk a lot about their ability to delegate and empower as being something that really enables them to lift off their shoulders so much pressure. So of course, as leaders, everything stops, ultimately you're accountable. But if you can get through a place where you're able to more effectively delegate and really empower people to do work, you start to shift and see how you're giving people an opportunity to develop, whereas before it might have felt like something that you would be afraid of doing. So, sometimes what people get out of the program is kind of liberating themselves from that sort of fear, letting go of some things, and seeing how other people can flourish and produce results at the same time. So I think that empowerment and delegation, at least from what I have observed, seem to be big themes in addition to everything that you mentioned, Mike, which is, spot on. So I think with that, I'm getting some questions around dates and sort of more logistics, if you think it makes sense to go back to that, or we could defer that.
Yeah, let's go there in a sec. I just want to get this. I got a question here. Is this program appropriate for C-suite executives?
Excellent. Thank you. Yes.
So, I'll give you an example. When we started working with one of the Department of Defense agencies, we started with a pilot, and then they liked it. So then it kind of expanded and expanded. And within 18 months, it became a mandated program for all the senior executives and all the new seniors. It's like, it was part of when you become a senior executive, this was a core training course that they did. And the idea is that they're looking to really shift the whole culture of the agency by leader as coach. So they've really taken the content, and, in any team meeting now, it's expected that they, co-create the relationship. They have agreements, that they use a different style of question. And all the different skills are like embedded and expected in how they operate. And this agency is very technical, right? It's a very technical agency. So, but they've really seen the value, and when they do their employee engagement surveys, they've really seen how the workforce has really responded to that. So it's sort of become a culture change program. Does that help answer your question? All right, I'll assume for now it does and move on, and if it doesn't, let me know. Okay, so back to some of the, hold on a sec. Something weird's going on here. Here we go. Sandra, can you see program highlights?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. So this is how it works. There's the virtual training with live sessions. So as you'll see here, there's 4 live sessions. We start with an orientation call to get you oriented to the program, and really for you to think about your calendar as you for the 2 months, right? So we'll be really clear and specific about the expectations of the program, which we'll summarize right now, and what it really means to be out of office, or as we used to call it. I think we've all been out of office for the last year. But so that's the orientation call, which is an hour, and it's expected that everyone attends that. So session 1 is the 28th of September. This one is a 3.5-hour session. And so in session 1, we're giving you the foundations of coaching. So we're going through introducing what coaching is, what it isn't, how to create safety, and introducing you to some of the foundational skills like the active listening, asking these powerful questions. Then between session 1 and 2, and this is true for all the in-betweens, there is a good amount of asynchronous learning for you to do. Some of it is mandated, some of it is optional. So there is like watch a video of a demo, right? A demonstration of one of our trainers holding a coaching session with somebody else. And these are real, they're not role plays. For the most part, they're real. So occasionally we'll do role plays as well. But you'll also have some journaling to do. You'll meet with a couple of other folks from your cohort, and you will practice coaching, and we'll give you all the structure for how to do that. There'll be some reading, and there'll be other activities to do as well. Session 2, you come back, and we do a deep dive and give you more coaching skills. So we look at, a whole bunch of other coaching skills, and we look at values. So we look at, how do you help yourself, first of all, and it all starts with you. And then how do you help those in your team really connect with their own values and align with the values of the team and the organization. So we have a structure way of how to get people more engaged at work through building more sense of meaning and purpose in the work that they do. You then have a bunch more work to do between modules 2 and 3. And I'd say on average, it's probably about 6 hours between those 2 weeks. So we think it's like 30 minutes a day. Between those two, and then you will come back, and as you'll notice that the next 3 sessions are 3 hours. So the first one's 3.5, the next 3 are 3 hours. And then in session 3, the idea is that we introduce this idea of how do you help yourself, again, it all starts with you, your team and your organization, how do you help them shift above the line? So we work with this really simple structure of like reactive to creative. And we define what those words mean, but using the idea of awareness, choice, transformation, and through coaching, how do you help people become more self-aware of the impact that they're having and the self-limiting beliefs that they're holding? So we really start working with listening for language, limiting language, listening for dissonant energy, and then helping them to reframe that and using the different skills that you've learned in 1 and 2, sessions 1 and 2, to help someone shift to get above the line. And once you've got them above the line, with session 4, it's how do you help them stay there? So what is it that, and we start integrating everything together. It's like, now you as a leader are operating above the line. How do you, what do you sustain that? It's sort of like the idea of positive psychology. We bring in some of the concepts from that. To help you and your team stay above the line, to be highly effective and highly performing teams. And we also do other sort of celebratory things in module 4. We do more integration, we do more application. So really focusing on you making the intellectual link between one of the coaching theory and application back at work, so that you feel really confident in being able to go into a meeting and introducing a skill, right? Either for yourself or for the team to start using. So that's module 4. And then there's a little bit of a gap between November and November the 9th and December the 10th. Then we come back and we have a completion call. So we just recently had that one with the previous cohort for 90 minutes. And really that's an opportunity for the cohort to share what they're learning, where they're still struggling, where they need help. And it's great to hear the feedback that we get from them in terms of what's shifted for them just in the 2 months of being in this program, how they're applying the different skills. And then, yeah, we sort of already mentioned the group practice that happens. So you'll be doing a lot of practice with other cohort members, practicing coaching, practicing out different techniques, so that you feel confident in using these back at work. Okay, I'll stop sharing there and see if we have any more questions.
I don't see questions, but we'll wait for a couple more. Mike, something that I sometimes get a question about is sort of how do these sessions go? What can I expect to happen during those 3 hours that I'm in my Zoom? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so the sessions are on Zoom, so same platform as we're on right now. And typically our approach is, first of all, we give you 10 minutes at the beginning just to kind of check in and see if there's any questions that you've got from your homework. And then we'll just work through and answer those. And then we'll introduce some new content. So we'll introduce you to the topic, to the content for the session. And then typically the trainers will do a demo on one of you. So you get to volunteer, not voluntold. If you have something that's going on at work that you want help with, right? And then the trainer will demonstrate like how to use that coach approach or whatever that technique is, whether it's values, shifting above the line or specific coaching skills. And then guess what? You get to practice. So you'd be in a breakout rooms and, we'll come in and listen in and give you feedback as you go through that to help guide you. And then the asynchronous work is typically, most of it will be reinforcing and deepening the learning from that session. There'll be a couple of times when we say, watch this video and be prepared for the next session to set you up for the next session as well.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I think it's all real. So I think that all of the coaching scenarios are real scenarios. There's no fictitious, right, or hypothetical situations. They're all real. So you're learning from other people's challenges or successes as you're going through the program. So I think we have probably it's time to wrap up. Maybe, Mike, we can talk about the registration process a little bit and tuition, which I don't know, just mentioning the tuition for the program is $2,995. There are preferred pricing models for groups of 3 or more. So if that's something that is of interest, feel free to get in touch with us. And you'll receive a link to the webinar after this. So you certainly can go back and the website is fairly intuitive. You can just register yourself or you can register people for your organization. So the registration deadline, I think, is later in the fall. I believe it's like August. Do we have that up in the slide, Mike? If you can put it up. It's August. It's September 20th. Thank you. So September 20th. And so you have some time, but I encourage you to reserve your spot. And if you have any other further questions for the team or for myself, feel free to reach out to us. I will put my email on the chat if people have any kind of questions or thoughts. Anything you'd like to say as we close off, Mike?
Just there is one question here. What is the maximum number of participants?
I think we'd like to say between 30 and 40. Our last cohort was closer to 27 people, I believe. And so we break people up into triads. And so we find that's still a really good manageable group. And we always have 2 facilitators for every one of the sessions. So that's a good number between 30 and 40. But it may be smaller or larger than that, a little bit larger than that. But we like to not to go above 40.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. I'm going to put my email here, although I think that we have the custom program email as well if you want to get in touch with us. But let us know if you have any other questions and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.